The want-ad job posting. The Long Shadow of Harvey Louis Carignan. Prologue. A hammer and a newspaper. The newsstand smells like printer's ink and morning coffee. A tired-looking man scans the classifieds. Help wanted at service station. Teen work, no experience. Can give you a ride too. His eyes hook on the word work the way a crow catches the glint of a coin. Somewhere else a garage. Rubber grit underfoot, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. A hammer lies on the bench, like part of the scenery. No different from a chair or a bucket. It's always there. A tool you don't need to buy or hide. Every house already has one. That's how the hunt began for the man they called the want-ad killer. He didn't stalk forest paths or midnight parks. He walked down newsprint columns where in mid-20th century America, strangers met. The one who needed and the one who offered. At that crossing point, trust feels natural and suspicion impolite. Carignan understood this before most. Part 1, Where the Cold Begins. A Childhood Written in Pencil, 1927, Fargo, North Dakota. A boy without a steady we, not in family, not at school. He learns what institutions look like from the inside. An aunt, an uncle, then back to his mother, then a reform school whose file notes enuresis, childhood chorea. Words that invite teasing elsewhere become stigma here, compressing into a solid layer of shame. Add early runaways, small fights, and the first lesson that rules bend if you push, that you can cheat if you're quick. School isn't a place of strength or friendship. Hallways too long, patience too short. Everywhere, tests of loyalty to the right adults. He absorbs a worldview early. Punishment is inevitable, but there's always an exit. Later that thought turns into a mania. Life is a game won by the one who moves first and leaves the fewest traces. Part 2, Alaska, high beams, and 2 sentences inside one man. The late 1940s carry him to the edge of the map anchorage. Alaska, not yet a state but a territory. Stark winters, sawmills, small cafes with harsh coffee and sharper talk. In July 1949, he crosses a line after which the world never resets. An attack and the murder of Laura Showalter. Weeks later, another assault on Christine Norton, then arrest, then confession. The court stacks a tower of sentences. Death for murder, plus a long term for the assault. The tower seems solid until a crack splits the base. The crack is an interrogation with a promise. Confess, and there will be no hanging. In law, such promises poison evidence. In 1951, the U.S. Supreme Court walks the case back, lifting the heaviest stone from the verdict. The death sentence for murder is vacated because the confession is inadmissible. United States v. Carignan, 342 U.S. 36, 1951. He still serves time for the assault, but for the killing. He does not receive what the public expected. The system lawfully softens the fate of a man who didn't step over himself. He stepped over another life. He's moved to tougher prisons, including the legendary Alcatraz. If oceans round stones smooth, prisons often sharpen people's edges. He's paroled in 1960, already practiced at living in the margins. Part 3, Quiet Criminal Arithmetic of the 1960s. The 1960s aren't just music and motels along highways. They're years before U.S. states fully stitch their data together, before trace evidence standards mature, before taped, rights-clean interrogations become the norm. Against that backdrop, Carignan spins petty crimes, like a polisher spins filings. Burglaries, parole violations, short terms. He learns to look over his shoulder, to relocate, to flip roofs, to test the vigilance of new towns. In police files, he's not high risk, unremarkable, one more kink among thousands. The most frightening thing about him then is precisely his unremarkableness. Part 4, Washington State, 1972 to 1973. The classifieds as bait. Newspaper pages are a civic square. In Washington in 1972 and 1973, young women come to that square looking for side jobs. Leslie Laura Brock, 19. Kathy Sue Miller, 15. They share no friendship, only a method. Answer an ad, meet on neutral ground, take a short drive, then darkness, blows, disappearance. Detectives quickly circle the same man. Witnesses see Leslie climb into his pickup. Kathy follows the same job script. But the 1970s have their own logic. Without DNA, without ubiquitous cameras, without cross-state data mesh, two almost complete pictures don't lock into a lawful conviction. He slips away. His private notebook adds a line. The system loves uncertainty. Part 5, Minnesota, 1973-1974. Acceleration and audacity. In Minnesota, he moves in short, testing bursts, as if timing the pauses between police shifts. September 1973, he picks up Jerry Billings, 13. Blows, sexual assault, threats. This time he lets her go. Why? Many answers fit. Spooked, rushed, testing limits. For her, that why will forever sound like glass breaking each time a cup shatters in a kitchen. August 1974. Eileen Hunley, 29. She leaves him and vanishes. Weeks later, she's found. Detectives don't need poetic words. They need math. The tool, the method, the traces. The math says, it's him. September 1974. Gwen Burton, near Sears. A car, threats, strangling, sexual assault with an object. She survives and gives the kind of account one seldom hears. A living voice that got free. Her words are the hinge, no longer a detail, but a brace. Days later, Sally Versoy and Diane Flynn, sexual coercion and beating, escape at a gas station. And finally, Kathy Schultz, 18. Disappearance. A field. A skull shattered by blowsps. When 4 survivors and 2 bodies share a signature, even the 1970s stop being his ally. He's arrested on September 24th, 1974. He'll try a religious mask in court claiming to punish sin. Theology doesn't tolerate self-ordained executioners. Neither does a jury. Part 6, Trials and Years. How a Verdict is Built. Courtrooms aren't stages for catharsis. They're workshops where a product called verdict is assembled. First come the cases built on survivors. Attempted murder, rape, aggravated sexual assaults. Then the killings of Eileen Hunley and Kathy Schultz. He pleads to second-degree murder for Schultz, 40 years. For Hunley, he's convicted of first-degree murder life. Between these rulings lie evaluations without romance. Antisocial personality disorder, ASPD, a stable pattern of lying, aggression, and lack of empathy. A man who thrived between the lines finally meets a curb he cannot vault. He will remain in prison for the rest of his life. He dies there an old man on March 6, 2023, in a system he once manipulated so deftly. Part 7. Psychological Portrait. The Craftsman of Violence. There's no glamorous sheen here, none of the myth that films paste onto villains. His genius is mechanical. 1. Bait through ordinariness. Classifieds are a trusting environment. They promise a normal meeting. 2. Simple logistics. Parking lots, shoulders, storage rooms, garages, spaces where a person already disappears for a while. 3. A tool that never needs explaining. A hammer isn't a weapon, it's a tool. It looks innocent in a trunk. 4. Control through degradation. Object rape, head blows more than physical acts. They're the erasure of personhood. 5. Cold lying. The courtroom voice of God is just another instrument, like the hammer in the garage. From a profiling standpoint, a fixed antisocial core exploitation, lack of empathy, habitual norm-breaking and deceit, parasitism on trust. He's not a predator of shadows. He's a predator of habits. Part 8. Portraits of Victims and Survivors, with Care. Laura Showalter, an adult woman moving through her routine, not knowing a stranger's random route, will cut through her life. Obituaries called her hard-working, reliable. Those words are real. Eileen Hunley, a quiet biography, jobs, an attempt at ordinary life. What tears the heart is this: she left a dangerous man and still wasn't safe. Catherine, Kathy. Schultz, 18, the age when plan has direction, not a map. They find her in a field, and for those who read about it, that field hums for years. Leslie Laura Brock, 19, Washington, autumn. Witnesses saw her step into a pickup. A small gesture of trust to a stranger, a step millions take daily. Kathy Sue Miller, 15. An ad, a meeting, a drive. The ordinary turns fatal. Survivors, Jerry Billings. Her voice matters because it was heard at all. Many in her place never come back to speak. Gwen Burton told police about strangling and object rape, supplied details that became a backbone of the case. Sally Versoy and Diane Flynn, teens who ran. Saving themselves, they tugged the thread that led detectives to the coil. These stories aren't a backdrop. They're the center. We say their names so the killer's portrait doesn't swallow the frame. Part 9, Timeline, expanded. 1927 May, born in Fargo. Fragmented placements, reform school, medical notations, early runaways. 1945-1949, military service, Anchorage. 1949 July to September, murder of Laura Showalter, assault on Christine Norton, arrest, confession. 1951, U.S. Supreme Court excludes the confession. The death sentence for murder is vacated. The assault term stands. United States versus Carignan. 1952-1960, high security time, including Alcatraz, then parole. 1960-1968, burglaries, parole violations, ping-ponging short sentences in Minnesota and Washington. 1972, October, murder of Leslie Brock, Washington. Strong suspicion, no charge. 1973, May, murder of Kathy Sue Miller, Washington. Same luring method, evidence insufficient at the time. 1973, September, assault on Jerry Billings, Minnesota. She survives. 1974, August-September, murder of Eileen Hunley, assaults on Gwen Burton, Sally Versoy, Diane Flynn, murder of Kathy Schultz. 1974, September 24th, arrest. 1975-1976, convictions for assaults and attempted murder, then life for Hunley and 40 years on the Schultz plea. 2023, March 6th, dies in Minnesota prison. Part 10, The Architecture of His Crimes. No elaborate preps. The script is minimalist. Locate through ads, job site gig, especially for youth. Meet on neutral ground. Lot shoulder, store frontage. Snap control fast. Threats, sudden blows, restraints, trangling. Use an unremarkable tool. A hammer looks lawful anywhere. Dump or vanish at a place with low passerby attention. Minimalism made him dangerous. Where there's no complex plan, there's less to break. Part 11. Mistakes by police and courts. A 3-move problem with different costs. Move. 1. The promised leniency interrogation. Alaska, 1949-1951. Bad tactics, implying no hanging in exchange for confession, killed the lawfulness of the key evidence. The judiciary reacted correctly, in the legal sense. But the public remembers the outcome. A killer, escaping full punishment for murder. Not a court's error, a questioning error. It became a generation's lesson. Move 2. The graininess of the 60s, 70s across state lines. Washington knew one set of facts, Minnesota another. A suspect's whole biography often fell apart into fragments. Where today interagency databases hum, then there were teletypes, paper, and human gaps. Result 2, resonant cases without enough lawful weight for charges at the time. Move 3, parole supervision and repeat, second chances. He ferried himself from prison to prison, state to state, like luggage. Oversight was formal. Paperwork loved straight lines, not risk profiles. Obvious now, not then. But systems learn. By 1974-1976, survivor accounts, signature overlap, geography, timing, and direct identifications braided into a rope that didn't snap. Part 12. The courtroom tableau, a semi-literary reconstruction. A room. Defense table, prosecution table. He speaks of a voice from above, of being a moral sentry. The prosecutor doesn't arch an eyebrow. He lays out a map dotted with flags and a list of names where dates line up without gaps. An expert, plain and untheatrical, explains. A stable pattern of violence, an antisocial personality structure, a deficit of empathy. The judge watches not a protagonist, but a mechanism. How place, time, method, and survivor descriptions coincide. Verdicts aren't built with hatred. Hatred proves nothing. Facts do. The facts are enough to close the door behind him forever. Part 13. Risk factors, clinically and plainly. Early institutionalization. Reform school didn't heal. It cemented a we versus the world stance. Shame recycling into aggression. Childhood diagnoses feeding chronic shame. Shame powering retaliation against the world. Lying as a strategy. Lying pays if it works often. It worked often for him. Parasitizing trust. Ads aren't just a hunting ground. They're an attack on the very idea of social safety. Escalation. The 60s as a gym for petty crime. The 70s as a move to major violence. Instrument rigidity. The hammer wasn't random, but habitual. Control, convenience, inconspicuousness. Part 14. Vignettes of an era. To feel the air. A newsstand, 1973. A kid circles classifieds with a pencil, marking them like a treasure map. He doesn't know a snare sits in those short lines. The seer's lot. A woman carries a bag of small things. The autumn sky is glass clear, cars hunkered on asphalt. Her name is Gwen. She doesn't yet know she'll have to fight for her life, and that her voice will later help save others. Minnesota fields, road and field, two plain words. Here silence isn't grace, it's the acoustics of tragedy. Part 15. What made the case unbreakable? The bundle of proof, consistent survivor accounts, matching details, words, threats, places, objects, method repetition, head blows, a household tool, instant control, geography and time, a tight window late summer in September 1974, and close locations, the ad pipeline, the same lure across episodes, in an era before labs could say DNA match odds 1 in. Courts leaned on this net. It held. Part 16. What we know for sure and what stays gray, legally confirmed. The murders of Eileen Hunley and Catherine Schultz, the assaults on Gwen Burton, Jerry Billings, Sally Versoy, Diane Flynn, the early Alaska assault conviction, the vacating of the murder-death sentence in United States versus Carignan because of an inadmissible confession. Gray zone. The Washington homicides of Leslie Brock and Kathy Sue Miller. Very strong suspicion and framework, but without a full evidentiary set, that era gave prosecutors no lawful footing. A hard truth. Respect for proof isn't weakness. It's the system's strength. Sometimes that strength is very costly. Part 17. An epilogue of memory. What saying the name means. Old age in prison isn't repentance, it's timekeeping. He died in 2023 after classifieds moved online and cameras learned to see night like day. But his lesson hasn't aged. Evil loves trust intermediaries. Today they're apps, profiles, safe platforms. We name the center of this story not as him, but as them. Laura Showalter, Eileen Hunley, Catherine Kathy Schultz, Leslie Brock, Kathy Sue Miller, and those who lived to speak, Jerry Billings, Gwen Burton, Sally Versoy, Diane Flynn. Their voices are why we can close the story. There's a temptation to end with a comforting formula. Evil punished, order restored. The real ending is rougher. Harvey Louis Carignan died old, not because he repented, but because prison walls outlive legends. Justice didn't restore what was stolen. It only stopped more from being stolen. Sometimes stopping is the most human law can do, and we need to accept that. Law isn't a god, it's a limiter. What remains for us are a few simple and therefore difficult rules. First, don't confuse politeness with trust. An ad, a badge, an official tone isn't safety by itself. Second, hear the alarm. Your inner siren isn't a quirk. It's an ancient skill that saved people long before door cams and viral posts. Third, speak and record. If something happens, statements, details, names. Human memory is flawed, yet written in time it becomes the bridge to verdicts. Fourth, learn from errors without abandoning fairness. Bad interrogations kill good cases. Lazy supervision breeds new victims. Procedure isn't a cold formality, it's the smell of brake pads before the cliff. Today the newspaper is a screen. Classifieds live in apps. Interviews sometimes happen in chats where the interviewer has no face, only an avatar. The logic hasn't changed. Trust intermediaries, ads, platforms, familiar signatures are still doors anyone can walk through. No technology replaces the boring basics. Verify, confirm, bring someone with you, leave a trail, set exact time and place, tell someone where you're going. Boredom is often safer than adventure. If a story like this must freeze on a final frame, let it not be the criminal. Let it be something else. Late evening, a parking lot softened by warm halos of streetlights. A woman in a coat zips her bag, looks up, and sees a store guard walk her to the bus stop. No heroics, just a small cultural rule. We look out for one another so we can live. The more such habits we share, the harder it becomes to parasitize normalcy. And one more frame, a table with a yellowed newspaper whose margins someone once cross-hatched with pencil marks. The paper isn't needed now. The cases are closed, sentences handed down. The prison outlasted another biography. We don't throw the page away. We fold it carefully and slide it into a folder whose label isn't his surname, but the word memory. Because this archive isn't about him. It's about those who weren't allowed to finish their sentences. That perhaps is the only fair ending. See to it that their names are spoken more often than his, so that in our common speech, the criminal remains a footnote to the main text, the human capacity to defend one another and to learn in time. Epilogue. Light above, the classifieds. Every city has a place where life feels most ordinary. The corkboard of notices at a supermarket, the job listings in a Sunday paper, the work nearby tab on a phone. People come to those like a watering hole seeking shifts, offering services, asking about rooms. Evil shouldn't live there. But Harvey Louis Carignan's story reminds us. Evil rarely steps from an alleyway. More often it wears the badge of normal and smiles, as if you were just the right hire. His road is longer than we like to measure human lives. It includes cell doors, furloughs, second chances, and other people's fates returned to like a trade. Once, the Supreme Court protected process, and it was right, because without process, justice curdles into revenge. But in the gap between law and life, a man walked who learned. If the world loves paper, paper can be tricked. He spent years learning not a craft of making, but a craft of vanishing, slipping past suspicion, ghosting across state lines, hiding intent in everyday things. His instrument was not only the hammer. His instrument was the ordinary. And in the end it was ordinary that betrayed him. Parking lots too alike, phrases too similar. A way of controlling and degrading too recognizable. The ones who lived to speak became the people who turned the key. They returned a voice the offender tried to steal. Their testimonies aren't an appendix. They're the central nerve. Crime craves silence. Silence breaks when someone says, "It was him." This is how he talks. This is how he looks. This is how he holds his hand. We often ask these cases, why didn't anyone stop him sooner? It's an honest question and a trap of hindsight. The 1970s didn't know what we know. No DNA kits in every lab. No one-stop databases. No camera in every pocket. Systems learn like people, by burning their fingers. Still, the system did learn stitched state to state, rewrote interrogation protocols, shifted parole from paper to practice. The price was high names that cannot be spoken in a hurry. Laura Showalter, Eileen Hunley, Kathy Schultz, Leslie Brock, Kathy Sue Miller, and those who lived and would not let the story go dark. Jerry Billings, Gwen Burton, Sally Versoy, Diane Flynn. Each time we say them, we fix a tiny tile in the mosaic, put a stone back, so the road takes weight again. There's comfort in ending with evil punished, order restored. But the truer ending is this. Carignan died a very old prisoner, not because he awakened morally, but because walls outlast stories. Justice didn't give back what was taken. It simply blocked the taking. Sometimes to block is the maximum human law can do. That, too, is worth honoring. Law isn't a god. It's a guardrail. What's left? A handful of humble rules. Don't mistake civility for safety. Heed your inner siren. Speak and document. Learn from errors without shrinking fairness. The newspaper became a screen. Classifieds, an app. Interviews, a chat. The logic is unchanged. Intermediaries of trust are still doors. No tool replaces the basics. Verify, bring someone, leave a trail, share your plan. Let the final image settle not on him. Let it settle on a small habit that keeps communities alive. A guard seeing someone home, neighbors scanning a lot, people who don't look away. Then fold the story, slide it into that folder labeled memory, and make one promise to the lost and the living. We will speak your names more often than his.